Strandhoff, the land where the stars fell. 1,010 years ago, the reckoning had occurred. Fragments of the astral sea began its fall to the material plane, nearly wiping out its existence as the people knew it. A gruesome feud between the astral dogma and the four kingdoms of Strandhoff raged on for 5 long years. Millions of lives lost to its brutality, until the Arcanist Conclave had finally cracked the code and enacted their plan. The plan of the Great Cleansing, a ritual led by the 9 most powerful archmages to have ever lived, to rid the land of the Scourge and push these monstrosities back to where they had come from. Forward in time, we focus on a group of mercenaries bound together by fate, through a small-time escort mission moving a noble back to his home in Brimfield, Vesemir, the vampire hunter, Normington, the farmhand on the search for his father, and Rena, a gnome in search for great power. They decide to stick together and scour the local bounty board to kill time. They pick up a few quests for some measly coin, until they proceed with their final endeavor. Retrieve a silver crate emblazoned with the symbol of a silver wolf from a group of bandits outside of town, and return it to Talcor. The party manages to cut down the bandits and retrieve the stolen crate, as well as a few other goodies. Vesemir manages to crack the lock and find what's inside. A curious bundle of star maps, each very detailed in their appearance and location, as well as a small stack of parchment speaking of how the stars are shifting in odd ways. After giving the crate back to Talcor, they interrogate him, to which he seems very hesitant to answer about his research. He finally gives in and concedes that there is something ominous going on out in the sky. Stars seem to shift places in the sky at very rapid paces, or flat out just disappearing from sight. He states that he might be able to get more information if they could get him to Greymore, so that he can speak with the Furbolgs in the Sanctuary of Ash. Upon leaving Brimfield, a strange feeling hangs heavy in the damp morning air. Right as they enter the heavy tree line, it happens. The silence suddenly cuts as an overwhelming purple streak bursts through the clouds, hurtling right towards the fields a few miles away. An earth-shattering impact heard just seconds later as Earth is tossed hundreds of feet in every direction. The party went to investigate immediately, pushing through the crowd of people. Is this really happening again? Are the meteors from times past falling once more? The party sneaks around to investigate further that night. After an altercation with the guards, they manage to crack open the meteor to reveal the skeletonized corpse of a small dragon, but with some very odd anatomy to them. They then begin to hear something approaching. The slow, yet powerful chopping of the air. The unmistakable sound of wings, and a huge set of them at that. A sound of twinkling crystals washes over the winds when, in a split second, cutting through the clouds is revealed to be a massive, obsidian dragon with a robed man riding upon its back. It lands atop the meteor and lets out a piercing roar as a cone of pure force emits from its maw directly into the sky. It then picks up the meteor and flies off through the clouds once more. The party and Talcor head towards Greymore. They find themselves surrounded by a mystical forest that now takes on an ashy white and deep velvet purple, with maroon leaves dotting its branches. Reaching the Sanctuary of Ash, the party is greeted by a group of Furbolgs: Midatis, the chieftain, Kimura, the archdruid, and Norkos, the stargazer. They request that the party defeat a monster known as the Witchick that had been awoken by the falling of the meteor. After defeating the Witchick, Norkos confirms the suspicions that Talcor had, and states that it is upsetting the balance of the forces deep within the Astral Sea, making it very unstable. Talcor stays with the Stargazers to aid in their studies of revealing new information. Midatis tells the party of an ancient temple dedicated to the Starfather on Makarok Island that may help answer some questions. Riding a skiff across Crest Lake, the party finds themselves in Dead Man's Stilts, the town swallowed by the Trican Marsh, right in the middle of an assault being laid by the local lizardfolk tribes. They manage to fend them off, and as a show of gratitude are taken to meet the leader of the town, Hexen. Hexen tells them that he can secure a free voyage to Makarok for them if they take care of this lizardfolk problem. The party reluctantly agrees before heading out to take care of them. After a small siege against the leaders of the tribe, the party finds that there is another instance of this strange astral energy. The crystal at the end of the leader's staff was brooding with heavy arcane energy that was driving them insane, causing them to lash out even more than usual. They take note of this and bring the evidence of the leader's head to Hexen. He seems very pleased with this, offering payment and a written notice of their voyage in Port Lark. Before leaving, the party manages to make another new addition to the party, a young halfling by the name of Rika Fleetfoot, who had wanted to adventure but was tied down to his job at the local bar. The promised outsiders arrive in Port Lark a few days later, building a better repertoire with Rika as they form a tight bond with each other, namely with Rena as they blossom into a relationship. Shadowed by the dark peaks in the distance, they meet with the captain of the majestic Windshear's Call, Darmon Talfai. They commence on their journey coming across a plethora of encounters, namely picking up a stranded green dragonborn named Dundee Krako, a devout paladin of Justicar, after his fishing boat had been capsized and sunk by a kraken. Arriving on the shores of Makarok, the party begins to head into the dense jungle in search of the temple. They get ambushed by a small group of displacer beasts that had cornered them between two sharp, rocky walls. A surprise group of turtles charges in to help take down the beasts in their wake. These turtles offer to bring the party back to their village dubbed Guaravaya. They are welcomed into the village with open arms and are met with the village elder, Ortik. He tells how the spirits of the island have revealed to him that the temple has been calling out to someone that he did not yet know, but now recognizes that it has been calling out for their group. He appoints the elder druid of the village, Juya, to escort them to the Ubiye temple. A journey through the dense, humid jungle leads the party to the outskirts of the temple, an ancient stone brick pyramid at the center of a lake connected by a deteriorating stone bridge, the symbol of the Starfather floating above the stones. Upon entering the temple, the party claw their way through a multitude of puzzles that were laid out at each level of the pyramid, those being a test of faith, constitution, and intelligence relating to the stars. Reaching the final layer, they happen upon a large altar room. A crimson-robed figure adorning a white mask over their face turns to them and exclaims, "Aurelion sends his regards," as she summons a corrupted astral dragon upon them and teleports away. The party manages to defeat the beast and claim the knowledge that they had been seeking. Using a calendar mechanism, the party moves the date to the future, showing the stars are randomly disappearing until there are none left hanging in the night sky, aside from a few that have turned a deep crimson red. On the way back, the party had found a shell that answered any yes or no question they had. Not knowing if it was telling the truth, they ask many questions in regards to their future endeavors relating to the cult, themselves, and Normington's father, Titus. They gather enough clues to know that Titus is somewhere within the Vindali woods. This shell became a source of paranoia and jealousy for the party, trying to garner more information to try and control the outcome of their own future. Soon after, the promised outsiders find themselves at Karakin, the city of dragons in Dundee's hometown, just in time for the Platinum Festival. They take a well-deserved rest, celebrating the city's heritage through games, drink, and entertainment. The following day, rumors had spread through the citizens that a heist for raw magical materials had taken place during the height of the festival. The guard had captured one of the assailants, attempting to interrogate him, but to no avail. They brought the party to his holding cell, and through Dundee's aggressive methods, they learned that his partner had escaped to the peak of the northernmost mountain of Red Devil Strife. Hastily, they make their way up the mountain with wyvern mounts, finding an opening in the rusty orange crag of the rocky face where the Astral Dogma had kept a hidden library disguised as a mining camp. Dispatching the onslaught of cultists, the promised outsiders find out that the cult is using experimental methods using raw arcane materials such as Everfrost, mana, and Spellfire to infuse the attributes of dragons into various species in order to better serve the dogma. They then traveled east towards Vendalin in order for Vesemir to follow up with his undead hunting guild, the Rarkir Order. They tell of a vampire coven that has hidden themselves deep within the woods to breed more of their kind in secret. Vesemir uses his tracking abilities to sniff out vampires that were hiding in plain sight amongst the people of Vendalin, which leads them to a bartender working at the Broken Stool in the Bronze Circle. He follows him back to his small apartment to find thick curtains hanging from all the windows. He interrogates him for a while, but Daredil finally cracks, saying that he never wanted to become what he is, and that he loathes the Coven with all of his being. Daredil takes the party in the dark of the night through the twisting woods to the vampire coven called Hillat Manor. The promised outsiders devised a plan to burn the manor to the ground after going in to save any innocents that would be in there. They gather many gallons of old cooking grease to be thrown onto the manor once the job is done. In the forest outside of the manor, they meet a lonely dryad adorning a sapling upon her back, named Wiro, in search of her satyr friend, Cosmo, that had been kidnapped by vampires and taken as prisoner. They sneakily make their way into the manor, trying to get a drop on the vampires. Unluckily, they had been caught by a thrall doing their chores, which ensued a fight they did not escape unscathed. Vesemir had been taken down by his mortal enemies after they drained him of his life force. Wiro had scrambled around her bags and the drawers of the room in search of a diamond to revive Vesemir, but to no avail. A moment later, Abel, the head of the coven, reared his head along with more of his spawn. He is delighted by the falling of Vesemir and has the party follow him or have the same fate. They move down into the cellar where they find Titus strapped into a bloodletting machine that was draining him of his fluids, as well as prisoners not yet turned or used as food, including Cosmo. With some quick thinking, the party manages to drive off the vampires with the force of radiant magic, having them flee to another hideout. Before setting off, they stand in front of the manor watching the blaze of glory set to the structure. The party comes back to the Rarkir Order with Vesemir's body in tow. They hold a beautiful funeral around a pyre with his body placed on top, as it is part of the Order's funeral rites. After the funeral, Rena bumps into someone on the streets of Vendelin who calls himself Harlow. He requests that the party all meet later that night. At the meeting, Harlow explains that he is a mage for Vendelin, and how they were not listening to his ideas that could save the city and even the kingdom from utter ruin. He tells of an ancient artifact from before the meteors fell that had the ability to store mass amounts of arcane energy with no potency loss, called a Huskarna vessel, located in the ruins of Berton. With some negotiation, the party agrees to go there and retrieve it for him. Now, with their new members, the promised outsiders head to Lionheart College to enroll Rika for the upcoming semester as promised. A heartfelt goodbye is had between them as he moves on to the next chapter of his bardic journey. Within this time, the party had taken another detour to visit Harnstead, the home village of Norm and his father. On this journey, Titus reveals that his bloodline descends from a long line of celestial beings. He had gone into hiding so that nobody would know what he truly is, but the vampires had taken a special interest in him. For months, they had drained him of his blood, all in search of some cure for their vulnerability to the sun and anything holy. Soon after, they head down the less trodden path towards Berton. The ruins of the ancient city had taken an unnatural overgrowth all over. They meet a community of dryads and, though timid, welcome the party to stay with them as needed. They meet with the village elder, Govin, and his advisor, Xerxes. They explain that hundreds of years ago, their ancestors were driven out of their original home due to deforestation, but were drawn to this location by a voice that they had perceived as their god, Vermillion. The massive tree growing out of the old city's keep in the center of the hedge maze is where Vermillion has settled. Xerxes escorts the party through the maze to get them outside of the keep. The party makes their way in, falling into a trap of kobold workers that were harvesting fungus beneath the keep. After clearing this area out, they make their way up to be stopped by a group of hobgoblins adorning blindfolds and finely tailored robes. The hobgoblins take the party to meet with this so-called god, for him to reveal that he has the vessel but will only hand it over in exchange for the Book of Life that was in possession of the Archmage Voseris that lived not far from here in Bearshore. When questioned as to why a god would need such an item, he reveals that he is in fact not a god, but an elder worm playing the role of one, his true name being Verilex. He had gone into hiding long ago after getting into an argument with his father, who had infected him with this curse that has been ever so slowly degenerating his biology and has been in hiding ever since. They meet with an aforementioned confidant in Bearshore to lead them into a secret entrance within their mountain cave system that was placed by Voseris. They get forged credentials from him showing that they were safety inspectors for the mines, which easily got them through with Rena's knowledge of mining safety procedures. They reach the secret doorway in the abandoned sector and speak the magic words to let them through. They had fallen into a trap that releases a flow of sleeping gas that knocks them out instantly. They all awake strapped to chairs, aside from Rena, who awoke in a bed in another room. Voseris enters her room and tells that he is Rena's old professor from Frostrime College, Terence of Varna. He quickly releases the party from captivity and speaks to them all. Once finding out that they are here on behalf of Veralex, he is rather displeased and outright distrusts the group, especially Wiro, thinking that she may be one of his townsfolk. He was persuaded otherwise through Rena's words to him, and reluctantly released the Book of Life to them. The party arrives back in Berton to make the exchange. Veralex gives them the large crystal vessel, as promised, in a cart with a cloaking tarp over top, to help hide it from prying eyes. Before their departure, Dundee sneaks out of his chambers in the keep to meet with Veralex in secret. In awe of seeing a dragon of this power, he wished to dedicate himself to Veralex in exchange for becoming his patron of power. He signs a contract and is infused with his draconic energy, furthering his power for his oath of conquest. Finally feeling like they have an edge against the astral dogma, the promised outsiders return back to Vendelin to make the exchange with Harlow. In the bleak of night, they arrive at the Pale Ale to meet with him once more. His underlings confirm that they have the vessel in their cart, and suddenly he drops the act. The illusion melts off of Harlow's body to then reveal the masked woman they had met in the Ubier temple. The patrons at the tavern, all under the same guise, morph into bloodthirsty astral monstrosities. The party almost had the upper hand in this battle, and then they heard it. The ferocious roar of the obsidian dragon that they had seen in Brimfield. The raw force energy shot from its maw, decimating the area. Once the dragon grabs onto the vessel, the robed woman blinks herself onto the dragon's back, flying up into the night sky through the clouds and into the full moon. Luckily, the woman had dropped a dossier in the rubble as they were blinking to safety. This dossier contained detailed notes on every party member, current and past, and the plans for the Harskarna vessel to use it as a means to store sacrificed souls. This dire turnaround of the situation placed a heavy burden of stress onto the shoulders of the promised outsiders. The same night, Normington makes the difficult decision of departing from the promised outsiders and going back to spend time with his family to protect them from now on. Cosmo, being haunted by nightmares since arriving, had been telepathically contacted by his old master whom he escaped captivity from, having him also make the decision of leaving in the night in the wake of a hastily written note saying goodbye. The following day, the promised outsiders had received 2 different letters from the Rarkir Order and the King of Vendelin requesting that they hold a meeting with them. First going to the Rarkir Order, they begin frantically explaining how Vesemir had been reconstituted back to his original form, only now completely made of ash and no memory of who he once was. He decides to don a new name that fits him better, mixing the old and new, Ashamir. The party then meets with the king and his council, who gives them a nudge in the right direction. Rumors had it that there is a moonstone dragon hidden in Sunivia with otherworldly planar power that could be quite useful to saving the realm. They are given a guide to escort through the perilous snowy wastes of the land. This is where they meet yet another addition to their party, King Vendel's butler, Davin Aurelius, who was very excited to meet and serve the party to the very best of his abilities. The party then heads off to the Kavadra, where they are able to teleport up to Sunivia. With the chilled Arctic air filling their lungs, they meet with their guide, Nelthin. The party starts their search for the Moonstone Dragon with Rena's old employer, Gramport Mining Company. After having a very awkward and passive-aggressive meeting with Rena's old boss, Lankin, he says if they can clear out one of their mines that got overtaken by some unknown beast, he would reveal the location to the Moonstone Dragon. With no other choice, they agree and move out on dog sleds towards the west. The closer they got to this mine shaft, the worse the weather had gotten, a constant and ever-growing blizzard falling upon them. They slowly make their way through the mine shaft, taking out ice elementals and zombies that filled the halls. Thinking that that was the worst of it, they move their way down to the final level, where they find out what has truly taken home here, an adult white dragon that seemed to be under some sort of mind control. With a few close calls and a couple of near-death experiences, the party defeats the dragon and takes proof of its death back to Gramport. Upon arriving back to Gramport, a very large cloaked man walks out of the building as the party arrives. Not thinking anything of it, they go inside and see the aftermath. The large man had gone into Lankin's office and roughed him up and all of his belongings. Beaten and bruised, Lankin takes their proof of death and hands over the details to where the Moonstone Dragon is. They travel yonder to the east. Once in close proximity, the entire party begins to experience odd dreams and being spoken to while asleep. These dreams only get stronger and stranger until they reach the summit of the peak and enter into the cave. The party all enters into a small, single-person chamber where each member has to face their greatest fears and the possible outcomes that are associated with it. After these trials, they finally meet with the dragon who calls herself Zorrigan. She urges that the only way for the Promised Outsiders to stop such an event would be for them to search out for these powerful Arcane-era artifacts: Constellia, Infinium, the Deathweaver's Mantle, the Charred Star, and the Seelie Mark, all scattered among the continent. Party then heads off to Rina's birth city, Forsworth. They face a powerful adversary while traveling underground, an ancient Behir by the name of Balukith. With some excellent teamwork, the party manages to fell the ancient beast, only they did not make it out unscathed. Rina had been taken by surprise, perishing from a rather powerful blast of lightning straight from Balukith. While in this state of death, Rina finds a small light of faith through a brief encounter with Maestra, the goddess of magic and knowledge. Luckily, the party was able to rush Rina to a priest in town that was powerful enough to cast a resurrection spell. A few weeks later, right as the party is about to depart from Forsworth, an ambush of cultists, obsidian dragons, and drakes all crawl themselves to the surface. A patchwork man made of yellow skin and dragon parts calls to the crowd to throw themselves to the mercy of the cults or face destruction. This is a call to action for the party to do or die. With the help of citizens, guards, and an unnamed winged battle mage, they manage to wipe the threat in a casualty-filled battle. Not 10 minutes later, after some celebrating, did a mirage appear in the center of the torn asunder city square. A mirage of the Dragon Rider warning the Promised Outsiders that they were coming to retrieve something that belonged to them. The city scrambled for safety, citizens being moved to tunnel networks that led out of the city, and the guard trying to strategize as best they can. The battle mage comes to the party and greets them hurriedly as Harokin, an archmage of Forsworth. He devises a plan to find fortitude in a magical shell that blocks outside forces. They all wait in dread of what is about to arrive soon. A meteor falls through the crust of the earth above and embeds itself right into the center of the city, obliterating a very large chunk of it. Very soon after, the familiar sound of twinkling crystals fills the air as the obsidian dragon comes gliding in. It thrashes the meteor open, devouring its contents and throwing it into the temple of Maestra. The dragon seemed to become overwhelmed with power after consuming its meal, shortly after flying out of the city and into the sky once more. After everything truly settles, the party is thrown a ceremony in honor of their heroic deed in slaying the cultists that had erupted from the earth, rewarding Rina the title of Redeemer and the deed to a keep within the city, where they begin devising a plan to build a resistance of the people, calling it the Dogma's Demise. The Promised Outsiders begin the long and tricky search for the artifacts that they had learned about, the first being the Deathweaver's Mantle. They procure mounted griffins to fly them to Fenrir, the location of the artifact and Ashemir's hometown. In their search, they meet with an old associate of Ashemir's by coincidence, who leads them to a secret hideout of the Rarkir Order outside of Fenrir. They meet with the Elder, Pastor Aurelion, who says that he knows where the artifact is hidden, within the Temple of Memories. After pacifying the tyrannical reign of Abel over Fenrir, Aurelius shows them the way to the temple. Moving around Kari Lake near the outer edge of the Dark Peaks. Inside the temple, Ashemir and the Promised Outsiders were faced with a series of challenges that tested the faith and knowledge of the Night Mother's teachings. Through one of these tests, Ashemir regains knowledge of his vital memories. This leads Ashemir to a massive Gothic altar room where he hears a voice beckoning him forward. He reaches the altar and melds his soul with the ethereal realm, where he learns the duties of a Deathweaver and truly gives himself to his goddess. He comes out from the shadow adorning the Deathweaver's mantle and a newfound faith in his mission. After some short stints in other cities, the party takes a stop in Lionheart College at the end of the semester in order to see if Rika wanted to swing along while on break. The party then stops in Vendelin for the Day of Reckoning ceremony to honor those fallen in the original plight an eon ago. At the height of the ceremony, another meteor crash lands in the small forest south of the city. The party hustles to the location to try and beat the astral dogma to it. Upon arrival, the meteor bursts open and reveals an unconscious, crystalline dragonborn. The masked woman appears once more with astral monstrosities surrounding the party. With some quick thinking, the party manages to tree stride from this area and back to their keep, avoiding the deadly ambush of the astral dogma. Not knowing what to do with this dragonborn, they take him to Hurricane so he can keep him safe in the meantime. The following day, the party meets at Hurricane's tower in order to secure a plane shift to the Fey realm. They all emerge in the otherworldly and alien landscape that is presented before them. Going through what felt like weeks of travel, the promised outsiders traverse through a series of ridiculous yet very life-threatening challenges and events, until eventually, making it through all 4 seasons of the realm, finally meet with a Mantiancian who is looking very weak and meager. He explains that in order for the Seelie mark to be given, they must defeat Carmilla the Cruel and her green dragon Nerneth. And so, after a very deserved long rest, the party gets transported into the ethereal realm to take her on head first. They had fought through a gruesome battle, piercing through her defenses of Nerneth and a mysterious obsidian obelisk that was granting her even more power than she held previously. After some very close calls and near deaths, they managed to defeat Carmilla and end her reign of terror as both her and Nerneth's bodies begin dissolving into the air. Coming back to the summer court, the party was greeted with open arms as a ceremony in honor of them took place, and for the Seelie mark to be placed onto Wiro, infusing her with the ever-growing and powerful essence of the Fae.